natural field for German expansion, a place where that he can then build out the German population, gather in resources, and defeat the monster of Bolshevism.
When investigators entered the Dresden villa of Friedrich Paulus after his death, they expected relics of a defeated general's past: medals, dusty maps, perhaps old letters. Instead, they uncovered a series of hidden rooms and secret documents that would shock intelligence agencies on both sides of the Cold War. What could be so sensitive that years of secrecy and surveillance surrounded this one man's lonely last residence? Paulus was no ordinary prisoner. His story intertwines betrayal, survival, and political intrigue. Was this villa just a retirement home, or the final battlefield of a conscience caught between two superpowers? The mystery that unfolded quietly in those sealed walls might change everything we thought we knew about his legacy. The Hidden Room Discovery. After Friedrich Paulus's death in 1957, officials were tasked with cataloging his possessions in a villa on Prostrassen Street in Dresden. What seemed like a routine process unexpectedly turned into a startling discovery. Behind a tall bookshelf in Paulus's study, investigators found a narrow, locked door concealed by a sliding panel. The door's hinges were old, and the keyhole had been carefully sealed with wax, suggesting it had been deliberately hidden. When opened, it revealed a cramped room filled with stacks of boxes, handwritten notes, maps, and sealed envelopes bearing Soviet insignia. This secret chamber was more than a mere archive. It hinted at stories that both East German and Soviet authorities preferred to keep concealed. The presence of documents, marked from 1945 and later, alongside files on German officers and correspondence addressed in Paulus's own hand, raised immediate questions about what information was truly stored there. Even more surprising were drafts of speeches condemning both Hitler and Stalin, a rare and dangerous position during the Cold War. What these materials contained and why they were hidden remained a mystery that would only deepen with time. The discovery of this secret room went far beyond what anyone expected from an old military officer's estate. While the villa appeared outwardly simple, every corner seemed to be layered with hidden meaning and subtle defiance. The documents appeared to challenge official narratives, including Soviet accounts of the war's end and Paulus's own conversion story. This hidden trove suggested that Paulus's life, long watched and controlled, still held secrets powerful enough to unsettle those in charge. The fact that these discoveries were swiftly confiscated, sealed, and removed to Berlin hinted at the document's political sensitivity. The East German Ministry for State Security, known as the Stasi, was well aware of the room's importance and took immediate action to bury the information. For decades, no full inventory of the materials was ever publicized. The question remained: what was so dangerous that both regimes wanted it locked away and forgotten? Despite the tight control, rumors slowly circulated among intelligence circles and historians. Some whispered about secret correspondences between Paulus and Soviet generals, contradicting the official stories told during and after his captivity. Others speculated that the materials contained personal reflections and interrogations, shedding doubt on the authenticity of Paulus's public image as a converted socialist symbol. Still, another theory suggested that photographs and coded notes inside the locked room might expose Soviet officers' involvement in wartime atrocities that neither side wanted revealed. These suspicions added layers of intrigue that transformed Paulus's villa from a simple residence into a symbol of Cold War espionage and unresolved history. Although no definitive answers emerged publicly, the hidden room forever changed how scholars and officials viewed the former field marshal's legacy. What started as the search for personal mementos opened a door to a far larger story, one tangled in silence, suspicion, and subterfuge. Paulus's villa, as a site of secrets, raised questions about the lengths to which both East German and Soviet powers would go to control historical narratives. The sudden disappearance of his files from Stasi records, coupled with the reassignment of officers who handled the materials, only deepened the mystery. It was as if the very walls of the villa held onto stories that could disrupt official versions of history. Locals noticed unusual activity around the property after his death. Officials arriving late at night, heavy boxes carried away, and guards posted well beyond the funeral. The villa, once wired with microphones and watched by agents, appeared less like a home and more like a fortress of forgotten truths. Such heavy surveillance reflected not just the man's controversial past, but the ongoing battle over his memory and the unresolved tensions between nations. The hidden room was the final piece of a puzzle that neither government wanted fully assembled. For years after, researchers and journalists searching for the so-called Paulus papers hit dead ends. The archives that might have revealed the truth were either destroyed, vanished, or relocated beyond reach. The silence that followed only fueled speculation about what had been lost or deliberately erased. It became clear that whatever Paulus had hidden behind that locked door was not mere family correspondence or tactical notes, but something far more sensitive, a secret kept from the public, guarded fiercely by two powerful states, which had every reason to fear the consequences of its release. The mystery surrounding the hidden room signaled a final, silent confrontation between historical fact and political expediency, one that continues to provoke questions nearly 70 years later. Understanding the secrets concealed at Paulus's villa requires a closer look at the man himself and the events that thrust him into the center of one of history's most devastating battles. Paulus's role at Stalingrad. Friedrich Paulus's name is forever linked to the deadly siege of Stalingrad, a turning point in World War II and a symbol of catastrophic defeat for Nazi Germany. Once celebrated as a meticulous and disciplined staff officer, Paulus rose through the ranks of the Wehrmacht based on strategy and order. However, the battle in the winter of 1942 to 1943 shattered not just his army, but his entire outlook. The Sixth Army, which he commanded, found itself encircled by Soviet forces, cut off from supplies and reinforcements amid freezing temperatures and relentless artillery bombardment. Thousands of soldiers died from starvation, exposure, or combat in a landscape transformed into a frozen graveyard. Despite the hopeless situation, Adolf Hitler ordered Paulus to hold the city at all costs, forbidding any retreat even as conditions worsened. Promoted to Field Marshal on January 30, 1943, Paulus faced an unspoken demand to fight to the death or take his own life before surrendering. No German field marshal had ever surrendered, and the title carried the dark expectation of ultimate sacrifice for honor. Yet, the man who had once embodied military discipline was exhausted, gaunt, and increasingly disillusioned with the Nazi leadership. On January 31st, against Hitler's explicit orders, Paulus made the unprecedented decision to surrender to the Red Army, thus becoming the highest-ranking German officer captured alive during the war. In Berlin, his surrender was met with condemnation and branded as treason by the Nazi regime. To others, however, Paulus's decision was one of survival in the face of impossible odds, not betrayal, but a stark acknowledgement of reality. His surrender had ripple effects far beyond the battlefield. The fall of Stalingrad marked a decisive defeat for Germany and emboldened the Soviet forces on the Eastern Front. For Paulus personally, it set him on a complicated path as a prisoner of war and political pawn. The Soviet Union immediately recognized his value and treated him not as a typical prisoner, but as a strategic asset. They guarded him carefully, studied him intensely, and used him to advance their political goals. His captivity was less about punishment and more about transformation, an effort to reshape an enemy symbol into a tool for Soviet propaganda. This marked the beginning of a long and gradual shift in Paulus's role from German military leader to a figure in the Cold War's psychological battles. Stalingrad also left a lasting scar on Paulus's reputation. To his former comrades, he was a figure of disgrace for surrendering when the Nazi ideal demanded death over capture. For the Allies and Soviet propagandists, he became proof that Nazi ideology could be broken. At the Nuremberg trials, Paulus testified against his former colleagues, describing Hitler's interference in military operations and dismissing false promises of relief. His calm, methodical testimony shocked many, reinforcing the image of a man whose beliefs had been shattered and remade under captivity. Still, questions lingered over Paulus's sincerity, whether he truly renounced Nazism or played a role to secure his survival. These doubts hovered over his legacy throughout his life and after death, shadowing the secrets that lingered in his Dresden home. Paulus's leadership during Stalingrad was a complex mixture of strict discipline and harsh reality. The battle itself symbolized the brutal collapse of German military fortunes on the Eastern Front. Yet the man behind the uniform was caught in a war of conscience and survival, struggling to reconcile his duty with the unfolding catastrophe. His surrender was both a historic event and personal break, the moment when a military career ended, but a new, darker narrative began. This fragile position made him a subject of intense scrutiny, both politically and personally, a prisoner whose story was far from over. Despite the global significance of Stalingrad, much about Paulus remained quietly contested during his years in captivity. The public image of conversion, in which he fully embraced Soviet ideology, concealed a more complicated reality of surveillance, control, and psychological pressure. This tension lingered especially during his time after the war, when he lived under constant watch in East Germany. That delicate existence would shape the final chapters of his life and set the stage for the concealed truths found within his Dresden mansion. Yet, the story of Friedrich Paulus after the war was not one of simple defeat or redemption. His years in Soviet custody reveal a deeper transformation shaped by politics, survival, and shifting allegiances. Soviet captivity and re-education. After his surrender at Stalingrad, Friedrich Paulus was taken into Soviet custody under markedly different conditions than typical prisoners of war. Instead of harsh imprisonment, he was given privileged treatment, housed comfortably, and surrounded by a cautious network of Soviet officers. His capture was not just a military event, it was a calculated opportunity to reshape the narrative of the war. Paulus was moved to a compound far from the front lines, where he was studied with a mix of curiosity and strategy. Unlike many prisoners, he was never publicly humiliated. Instead, the Soviets cultivated him carefully, seeing both his symbolic value and potential for propaganda. Initially, Paulus maintained a rigid silence. He refused to collaborate or denounce his former comrades, spending his time in isolation with military maps and notes. Yet, the slow erosion of his pride began with reports of Hitler's condemnation, how the Führer had branded him a disgrace to Germany for surrendering. This deep cut in loyalty created a psychological turning point. The man who had lived by strict military discipline found himself abandoned by the very system he had served. The Soviets seized on this moment, gradually introducing him to new ideas through debates with officers, theologians, and exiled German communists in Moscow. These carefully orchestrated encounters laid the groundwork for a slow but profound transformation. Over the years, Paulus's worldview shifted under pressure and persuasion. He began to accept a narrative in which Hitler had betrayed Germany rather than saved it. Whether this was genuine belief or survival strategy remains debated, but by 1946, he was ready to serve the Soviet cause publicly. His testimony at the Nuremberg trials was a pivotal moment, where his words confirmed Hitler's errors and military interference. Paulus spoke matter-of-factly and with chilling detachment, striking at the core of Nazi leadership. His willingness to testify against former colleagues shocked many and deepened suspicions that he had become a Soviet puppet. Yet Paulus never defended himself aggressively. Instead, he admitted his guilt in serving a criminal regime. Despite his role at Nuremberg, Paulus was not released immediately. He remained under strict surveillance, relocated to a guarded residence outside Moscow. His family, living in West Germany, was unreachable, further isolating him. Letters were permitted only under watchful eyes, and many of his days were spent in reflection or writing military analyses for Soviet officers. This strange captivity blended privilege with constraint, a carefully controlled existence that limited any true freedom. During this time, Soviet archivists took increasing interest in his notes, sketches, and marginalia from the war years. Some evidence suggests these writings created friction when his belongings later moved to Dresden, hinting at their sensitive nature. The death of Stalin in 1953 altered the political landscape, beginning a thaw that opened the door for Paulus's repatriation. However, he was not sent to his home in West Germany, but to East Germany, under Soviet-aligned control. In Dresden, he was given a villa, but it was less a home and more a gilded cage. His movements and communications were closely monitored by the Stasi, the state security service of East Germany. His villa was nicknamed Object Terrace and became a symbol of controlled hospitality. Despite occasional lectures and interviews, Paulus remained a prisoner in plain sight, his public persona tightly managed by the regimes that once battled him. Living in Dresden, Paulus's days were marked by routine and surveillance. Microphones hidden in lamps and furniture captured conversations, and every visitor was logged with precision. Neighbors saw a solitary figure walking the embankments of the Elbe River, often quiet and burdened. Those who encountered him remarked on his calm exterior, though his eyes betrayed a lingering guilt and sense of isolation. The villa's walls held more than memories. They harbored secrets that no one dared to speak aloud. The question remained, what was Paulus keeping from both sides, intentionally or unknowingly, within these carefully guarded quarters? The guarded life Paulus led in Dresden, layered with secrets and state scrutiny, set the stage for the astonishing revelations uncovered after his death. Secrets that continue to echo through history. Life in Dresden surveillance. Friedrich Paulus's transfer to Dresden in the early 1950s marked a shift into a different kind of captivity, one cloaked in civilian guise but heavy with surveillance. Though the city bore deep scars from wartime bombing, he was given a grand villa on Prostrassen Street, overlooking the Elbe River. To the public, this gesture appeared as respect for a rehabilitated field marshal. In reality, it was a gilded cage, heavily monitored by the East German Ministry for State Security, the Stasi. The villa earned the codename Object Terrace, a reminder that Paulus's freedom was always measured and controlled. Every aspect of Paulus's life in Dresden was watched and recorded. Phone lines in the villa were tapped, and microphones hidden inside lamps and furniture captured conversations. Plainclothes agents patrolled the surrounding garden and neighborhood, while a detailed log kept track of every visitor who entered or left the property. Even the gardener was rumored to be an informant, blending the ordinary with the ever-present state scrutiny. To many, Paulus was a ghost, seen but untouchable, a man whose presence reminded the city of its wounds and political fault lines. Despite this constant watchfulness, Paulus preserved the routines of a soldier. He rose early, meticulously arranged his workspace, and spent hours writing letters that were rarely sent. Neighbors often noticed him walking alone along the Elbe embankment, his posture erect but movements slow, his expression unreadable. His days were punctuated by visits from East German military officers who treated him with a mix of respect for his rank and wariness due to his complicated past. Occasionally, he gave lectures at the Military History Institute, warning against the dangers of fascism, though many suspected these were carefully scripted performances rather than spontaneous convictions. The villa itself offered a stark contrast, a spacious, sparsely furnished home with few personal effects. On display were a ceremonial saber, a portrait of Stalin, and a small model of Stalingrad sent by a Russian officer, symbols of the two regimes that had shaped Paulus's life. His personal belongings included military documents, books, and carefully guarded notes. In his upstairs study overlooking the river, he spent long hours reflection and writing, but the contents of his work remained a closely held secret. Was he a man resigned to his role, or quietly plotting? The Stasi's files later revealed the extent of the surveillance. Not only were calls monitored, but private conversations within the villa were also recorded. This level of intrusion left little room for privacy or genuine discourse. Paulus's visitors were scrutinized thoroughly. Former officers kept their distance. Loyalists branded him a traitor, and Western journalists were routinely denied access. The villa's fortified environment reflected a man caught between two worlds, but fully under the dominion of neither. The psychological toll of this monitored existence was evident to those who encountered him. Witnesses described Paulus as a man burdened by guilt, yet determined to maintain composure. His late-night habit of sitting by the darkened window, watching the city fade into silence, suggested a mind wrestling with memories and regrets. Whether he relived the horrors of war, feared political retribution, or pondered his legacy, the villa became a silent witness to a conscience imprisoned by history itself. Rumors spread among East German officers of hidden documents and notes secreted within the walls of the villa. Some believed Paulus was engaged in covert correspondence with Soviet officials, contradicting the narrative of his ideological conversion. Others speculated that he kept personal records that challenged both Soviet and German accounts of the war's final years. These whispers intensified the aura of mystery surrounding the villa, hinting at truths too sensitive for public eyes. When Paulus died quietly in February 1957, the official announcement was brief and controlled. A short statement praising his commitment to peace and a modest funeral under Soviet supervision. Yet for the Stasi and Soviet authorities, his death triggered a new phase of secrecy. They sealed the villa and launched a thorough search, but the findings remained classified. For decades, the full extent of what lay hidden behind those walls was obscured, fueling speculation and mistrust. This era of surveillance serves as a haunting example of how even high-ranking military figures could be transformed into symbols, prisoners of political narratives, rather than men free to write their own fate. Paulus's villa was no longer his sanctuary. It was a stage upon which the Cold War played out in shadows and silence. Behind the villa's fortified walls lay not only a life surveilled, but a trove of documents whose contents would challenge accepted history and ignite decades of speculation. Contents of the sealed documents. The secret chamber, hidden behind the study's bookshelf, held a collection far beyond what anyone had anticipated. Boxes filled with handwritten notes, maps, and sealed envelopes, adorned with Soviet insignia, stood as a tangible record of a life caught between conflicting loyalties. Many of these documents dated from 1945 and later, covering a period when Paulus's military and political identity was in flux. Among the papers were detailed files on German officers captured at Stalingrad, revealing layers of information beyond simple military records. What set this collection apart were the letters attributed to Paulus himself, some addressed to Soviet officials, others to family members long out of reach. These personal correspondences suggested a man deeply engaged with both sides of a conflict that divided his loyalties and shaped his survival. More mysterious were drafts of speeches he evidently never delivered, including a remarkable statement denouncing both Hitler and Stalin. Such denunciations were explosive at the time, as they simultaneously condemned fascism and Soviet authoritarianism, a dangerous stance in Cold War politics. Several intelligence officers later described these documents as politically sensitive, hinting at truths that could destabilize official versions of history. Known to insiders simply as the Field Marshal's papers, they were quickly seized, catalogued, and transferred to a highly restricted archive in Berlin. Not a single piece was ever released publicly, suggesting that their contents contained information no agency wished to see exposed. The depth of secrecy surrounding the collection alone speaks volumes about the power these papers might have wielded. Rumors that followed the discovery only heightened intrigue. Some claimed Paulus maintained secret communications with Soviet generals, discussing war events in ways that contradicted Soviet propaganda. Others mentioned personal interrogation transcripts and reflections indicating Paulus no longer believed the public narrative he had been compelled to promote. A few whispered of photographs and coded notes linking Soviet officers to wartime atrocities deliberately left out of official histories. These claims, while unprovable, added an ominous layer to the already complex story. The official inventory of materials related to Paulus was heavily redacted, and those who managed the files were soon reassigned. Within weeks, all references to Paulus's archival collection vanished from East German intelligence records. Only a few trusted officials reportedly accessed the full contents, and their reports remain classified to this day. Such extraordinary measures speak to the document's extraordinary nature and the fears they aroused in multiple governments. Historians have since unearthed fragments and references to personal materials of exceptional state relevance dated to the year of Paulus's death, 1957. Strikingly, the original documents have never resurfaced in any public archive, whether German or Russian. Their disappearance has fueled decades of speculation about whether they contained a secret memoir, exposure of Soviet war crimes, or evidence of covert alliances in the war's waning days. These theories remain tantalizing but unconfirmed, locked behind official silence. This mystery is compounded by conflicting narratives about Paulus himself. Was he a broken man cooperating for survival, or a deliberate player negotiating between powers? The papers found seem to suggest a complexity that neither narrative fully captures, offering glimpses into private doubts, strategic calculations, and a fractured conscience. What he preserved inside those sealed envelopes challenges the simple images assigned to him by victors and historians alike. The loss of these documents to history leaves a gap in understanding one of the 20th century's most enigmatic figures. It raises important questions about the politics of memory and the struggle over who controls the past. Paulus's hidden papers symbolize the tension between historical truth and political expediency, a reminder that what is buried in silence often shapes remembrance as much as what is openly declared. As shadows lengthen over Paulus's story, the question remains: why did those entrusted with his secrets choose to erase their traces, and what does that silence reveal about the legacies we are left to unravel? East German and Soviet cover-up. When the hidden room and its contents were discovered, East German authorities moved quickly to suppress all knowledge. The documents, deemed politically sensitive and ideologically dangerous, were confiscated and sealed in a restricted Berlin archive. Official references vanished, and those who handled the files were reassigned or quietly removed from related duties, signaling the seriousness of the materials. This cover-up fit a broader Cold War pattern. Inconvenient truths were buried to protect political narratives. The Soviets, invested in portraying Paulus as a loyal socialist convert, had no interest in documents revealing dissent, secret communications with German officers, or wartime atrocities. East Germany, closely allied with Moscow, enforced the secrecy, ensuring the files remained under layers of state security. Years later, fragments and tantalizing references appeared in historical records, hinting at personal materials of exceptional state relevance from 1957, the year of Paulus's death. Yet the documents themselves remain missing. Scholars encountering the vanished files faced a void, a symbol of erasure, and the power states wield over historical memory. Historians suggest the suppression was driven by fear of diplomatic embarrassment. East Germany wanted to appear loyal to the Soviet narrative, while hiding any hint that Paulus harbored dissent. Soviet authorities may have feared that private notes could expose miscalculations, internal failures, or even war crimes. Orders reportedly ensured strict secrecy, with key documents destroyed or permanently classified. In this Cold War context, where espionage, propaganda, and ideological control dominated, the vaulting of Paulus's papers reflects how states manipulate history. By erasing inconvenient evidence, East German and Soviet authorities fixed narratives, silencing critical re-examination. Yet the absence of the files speaks loudly, fueling speculation and mystery. Small leaks and insider accounts hinted at the explosive potential of the documents, but no full revelation ever emerged. The story became less about what existed and more about what was hidden, and why powerful regimes feared it. As speculation swirled around missing documents and lost archives, theories emerged seeking to explain the motives behind the concealment and what secrets Paulus's papers might truly hold. Theories surrounding the mystery. From the first reports of the hidden room to the disappearance of Paulus's files, numerous theories have emerged about the elusive documents. Some suggest he was secretly compiling a memoir, criticizing both Nazi and Soviet leadership, an account dangerous to all sides. Others propose he held sensitive Soviet military intelligence from captivity, which East German and Soviet authorities moved swiftly to suppress. Skeptics argue the story was exaggerated as Cold War propaganda, yet Stasi files and testimonies indicate the documents were real. Other possibilities include coded correspondence with fellow officers or lists of German and Soviet figures involved in wartime crimes or secret dealings. One draft reportedly denounced both Hitler and Stalin, revealing a conflicted conscience unwilling to endorse either ideology. The villa itself, once a hub of surveillance, embodies secrecy and the weight of hidden history. The vanished Paulus collection highlights how memory, power, and history intertwine, leaving historians with tantalizing fragments but no full picture. Its disappearance underscores the fragility of truth under political control and the lengths regimes go to shape legacy. Paulus's life and the secrets of his villa remain an enduring mystery, a reminder that history is often defined as much by what is withheld as by what is recorded. With so many competing theories and unanswered questions, the true legacy of Friedrich Paulus's final years and what was left behind continues to haunt historians and the city of Dresden itself. Legacy of silence and secrecy. The villa on Prostrassen Street still stands, a cream-colored house overlooking the Elbe River, blending quietly into Dresden. To most, it seems ordinary, yet it once belonged to Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, forever linked to Stalingrad. No plaque marks its history, but for those who know, it is a monument to secrecy, a home defined by what was hidden. After Germany's reunification, historians sought to uncover what happened after Paulus's death, only to find vanished files, destroyed reports, and gaps in official archives. The missing records suggest a deliberate erasure, possibly containing sensitive reflections on Hitler, Stalin, or post-war politics that neither East Germany nor the Soviets wanted revealed. Neighbors remembered officials arriving at night, trucks unloading boxes, and guards posted long after the funeral. In East Germany's culture of fear, silence was safety, and the mystery endured for decades. Despite efforts to locate the rumored Paulus collection, no trace ever surfaced, leaving a haunting void in the historical record. Once monitored by secret police, the villa now houses ordinary residents, yet its walls echo a man trapped between duty, ideology, and remorse. Paulus died believing he could control his legacy, but history chose otherwise. The villa stands as a warning of how regimes bury inconvenient truths and how the silence they create can resonate long after. Friedrich Paulus's mansion revealed a hidden history of surveillance, secrets, and silence that still puzzles historians today. His life, caught between two empires, reminds us how much of history is shaped by what remains concealed. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries unraveled.